This is the Heroes Podcast. I'm so happy to be back. It's been a while. I've got Christine West here from Alaska. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for showing up. And before we jump in, I wanted to intro you so everyone knows exactly who we are meeting with. Christine West lives in Alaska, is a natural outlier, and is the owner of the business MD.
Yeah.
She is very personable, extremely intuitive, open-minded, and spiritual. She is in the business of people, and as a psychological strategist, she recognizes for many skillful conversations, emotions, but one thing, relationships and leadership can be challenging. The Christine is here to make it simple. She realizes in emotional intelligence, communication, strategies, and human behavior. Thanks for joining me on this show. Do you want to
Yeah.
jump
Yes.
in the past? What was it like to be you 20
Uh,
years ago? Do you have some challenges?
wow. Yes, I remember who I used to be. And who I used to be, I was living based on my own conditioning. We're like all humans, I wasn't uh, as brave as I am now. And I was in a place in my life where I was doing everything that I thought was success. And I worked for corporations and I did everything that, the check boxes of saying that, okay, you do this, you'll be happy. You do this, you do this. But I found out by doing all those things of my conditioning, it was a recipe to lead me to a place of where I was so unhappy. I was lost. I didn't know who I was. And my outer shell was just living according to the world's standards, but my insides were screaming. They were screaming for me to just stop and just stop it because I just couldn't do it anymore. And it was the weirdest feeling because who I used to be, it was, why is this no longer attractive to me? I mean, and it wasn't as though from a perspective that my outer surroundings of having lots of money, having a good home, having lots of friends, having all these things that would be indicators to say, well, Christine is successful. But inside, I felt like a big loser because it
Mm.
was just such a mismatch. It was, I was living a life based on what everybody told me to do. But my shell was awakening. And my definition, my internal definition of success was so different than the world's definition of success. So 20 something years ago, I was going through like a major like breakdown. And it was weird. It was frightening.
And Christine, is it you said 27 years ago? Uh, so it's really going back to did you live in Alaska then? Or
No,
what's
I lived in Chicago. I lived in Chicago. So when we're going back, I'm speaking approximately when I look back at my life, let's take it back about say about 23, 4 years ago. And when I look at it from that perspective, it was, it's so true that money can't buy you happiness. And I got nothing against earning money because money, does help us. But what I recognized was that all this conditioning, all these things that I bought into, the things that I that my parents, said, hey, you go, and especially my mother, you go get a good job and you go do these things and you go get married and you go have children and you go do all these things. And I didn't understand. I bought into all that, but yet I was so miserable. And I just didn't understand. when I was working for the, corporations, corporate America, of why all of a sudden I stopped buying into all of this. And I was questioning more and more and more of the things in the world. And it was as though my soul was saying, no, you can't do this anymore. You just can't.
And
And I was just so misunderstood by why all of a sudden I would just walk away from everything the world said was successful.
so, what did your mom say? I was just wondering, as you're telling us that things went the opposite way inside you, realizing this is really maybe not your life.
Yeah.
What did mom say? And do you want to tell us how this walking away has happened? So we understand.
Yeah, I would say, when I was walking away, my mother literally at one time, especially when I was walking away, and especially when I went into the psychological field, I mean, my mother told me I was a loser. I mean, she literally told me I'm a loser. And she couldn't understand why in the world I would just give up all of these things. And what was I doing? And I mean, not just my mother, but other people that knew me, they thought that I went mad. And so it was as though, why would I have all of these things that I worked so hard for? Why was it so easy for me to walk away? So for my mother, it was okay, my daughter's gone mad. My mother felt that for me to go help people was something that was like strange. It was, as I said, I mean, having your mother call you a loser, in the beginning stages of things was very hurtful. And it was also, these things that, for her, because what I was doing wasn't good enough. And so mothers have this, this power, and it doesn't matter who your mother is. Your mother or even your father has this magical power over you that no matter, as life goes on, those messages that you carry and walking away from, what she viewed as good money was, why in the world would I go step into being an entrepreneur? Why would I go to Alaska? And that was, very strange. I mean, when I first came to Alaska for an adventure vacation, I mean, that was more for her of, okay, you're just going on this adventure and you'll come back. but but to be in that place of where all of a sudden that I was taking my life to a whole nother dimension, that scared the bejesus out of her.
And, and would you say, did they sort of come to rescue you? Has there many of them trying to convince you to go back? Or what was it like? I
Yeah.
understand was one of them, and then you went into this lovely adventure. How was it to deal with that?
Well, it was very difficult because, friends and family used to make bets on how long I would stay in Alaska. And, and what's really important for listeners to know, and I think this is a very important part of the story to share, because this has to do with the self-worth and it has to do with my identity, was, when I came to Alaska for the first time, I signed up for a beginning mountaineering course. And the reasons why I did that it wasn't because I was a mountaineer. It was because I was in my soul and my identity was in such a funk that I needed something crazy to snap me out of it. And I wasn't looking for anybody's permission to tell me the solution. I needed to listen to my soul. So when I went mountaineering and when I called the mountaineer, I asked them, will my cell phone work? And I said, no. And I said, well, when I start whining and crying about not wanting to do this adventure anymore, will you let me out of it? And they said, no, you're committed. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be committed. And I wanted to be committed to something that was so different. And I wanted to be outside of my comfort zone because my soul was so thirsty. And on these 7 days of being on this glacier in Alaska, in the Southeast Alaska, on the seventh day is when I met God for the first time, where I had this spiritual awakening to show me my life purpose. And the point of sharing that is that once I got a taste of that spiritual taste and shown through, God, what my life purpose was, and I could see in my consciousness what I was here for, and I can see how it can solve all my problems in a nanosecond. And once I tasted that, and when God said to me, all I have to do is follow his lead, and I said yes. I said yes to this. So what was nuts to the family, back to that question, was that they weren't living on purpose. So to them, they were subscribing to a world that said you live based on your conditioning. So they were making these bets like friends and family. Okay, she's going to stay up there like maybe 5 years, when I was getting done with my master's degree in psychology. And so, okay, she'll be back. Well, then I wasn't. And then it continued, them continue making bets. And it was where it was so misunderstood because they live based on their lives, based on a conditioned path where they couldn't understand what it meant to live meaning and purpose and to have a mission, which is different because most people are living a life that says, okay, you reach these plateaus and you earn so much money and then you save and then you go into retirement and you do all these things, and they couldn't understand why in the world they viewed me as selfish. They
Wow.
viewed me as that I left them behind or something. And because I was selfish to them, then therefore I should be punished.
Wow. And
Yeah.
would you would you say then they lived the life of safety and
Yes.
not true to their soul? Do you want
Correct.
to just tell us a bit more about, you mentioned that day 7. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a magic number, I guess,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah.
but how did that happen? You walked on the glacier or the sun? Tell us how does a spiritual awakening happen for you?
Well, okay. Well, this is how it happened for me. I can't say this is the recipe that happened for everybody because I wasn't looking for a spiritual awakening. Okay. I was a mess. I was in a place, okay. I was in this place in my life where I literally took a time off my work. I was lost. All I knew was that my soul needed something so crazy to snap it outside. I wanted relief. I wanted stress relief. I wanted overwhelm relief. I wanted to think clearly again. I wanted to love my life again. So here I am on this glacier, and this small group, we learned how to like climb a mountain. We learned how to, do mountaineering tools. The rest of the group was climbing a second mountain. They were on the glacier for 11 days. I was signed up for 7. I was alone in base camp waiting for this commuter plane, and there was nobody else around. It was just me. And I'm sitting there in the sunshine, and I had nobody to ask, when's the plane coming? I had no phone. I had nothing except for just sitting there, and I'm just journaling, and the sun's coming down. And then it was almost as though God literally was knocking on my door and saying, hey, listen, Christine, now I got you finally sitting there. Now you're going to pay attention. And I had nowhere to go. So how the awakening happened was was because when you're in nature and you start in those 7 days, so much like emotional junk just was peeling off me. And I would tell you this also, I'm not a dietitian, but I can tell you, you go live outside in cold weather. I literally, in 7 days, my body shed 20 pounds. And I was eating like a pig but your metabolism is so high. So as you're shredding so many things inside of you, and you're moving and you're one with nature, your senses, I mean, I've always been intuitive. Okay, I will say that, but your intuition starts increasing. And so being out in nature, it was literally where I was trusting this. I was just sitting there and I couldn't hear. I didn't turn it off. I wasn't afraid. It was exciting to me because I could feel it through my heart and through my chakras. And it was exciting to me because it was so different. And I'm not saying that I was this person back then that always followed in the footsteps of God. I was more what I would consider the type of person. I was spiritual, and I would say that I was the kind of person that, I mean, I knew who God was. I grew up Catholic, and I knew, okay, you do these things. But I was one of those people that I was messy. I was in a place where I did a lot of things that I would say that most people would say, why would God choose you? And so it was so it was one of those places where I it was as though God chose me in the sense of when he finally had me quiet. So that's how it happened. I believe that I don't, for listeners, I don't consider myself special. I just consider myself that I was willing to listen. I mean, we all have that ability if we allow ourselves to develop the intuition and we listen to learn the voice of God. And that's for me, that's what I learned. And I'm not saying I learned it on the glacier. I didn't go sign up. They didn't say, hey, you're going to learn the voice of God. Everything that I'm sharing with you wasn't part of the excursion. It was just a benefit that I received. And it was a planting in me about what I was going to be doing for a living if I wanted to. That's the beauty of the story, is that I could have very well have said, I've always been a businesswoman. And I said to God, well, if I say no, and God said to me, well, okay, you could say no, you got free will. You could just go back to sleep and you go back to complaining and you could go back to the life that you know in the familiar comfort zone, and we can be done. And I'll give this to somebody else.
It's almost like the Matrix movie. Did you
Yes.
want red or the blue pill? What I've
Yes,
heard.
it was. It was. It was very similar to that. And for listeners, it's really it's free will choice. I mean, waking up and stepping into your purpose. I mean, I'll share it. It's not like this sexy glamour that a lot of people think, because you're going to go through a lot of shedding. And you're going to doing a lot of shadow work, and you're going to start looking at yourself, and you're going to review all those messages and all those things that you bought into. And it's not a one-time thing. It's something that could take years and years and years. And then once all of a sudden you think you're over it and you reach a certain level. And every time you reach a new level, the new level brings in new sets of challenges. And sometimes you repeat some of the messages that you think, okay, in childhood, okay, I thought I was over this. And then all of a sudden you say, wow, okay, why am I having this, inner argument with, family members or things that happened a long time ago? Because we're constantly, as we grow, we end up being in that place where we have to face, the new demons inside of ourselves and get rid of, the layers of crap, the traumas.
Would you say it's a very lonely journey? I was just about to make a video about it, probably next week, because as we heard from you, and I recapped this a bit. So you made the decision to come out of this, you committed to this trip. There was nature in
Yes.
its raw form. There was quiet. And then you became so present that probably
Yes.
finally you heard the voice that's been yelling.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So congratulations. Uh, this is my experience that at times it's redefining who you are. It's questioning you over and over again, and it can be a very lonely journey. What would you say to that people, and especially my audience who are looking for the next version? What makes it easier? How could they keep going on this journey when it seems like no one around is interested in this jump in the dark?
Oh, good question. What I always share with anyone is you are stepping into your purpose or finding out, or if you finally meet, learn that voice with God, is one of the things that I can tell you that yes, sometimes it is a belief that hey, it's lonely, and you could view it that way. But I can tell you I don't feel lonely. And but that's because I have developed such a strong relationship with God. And but that took time, like any relationship. And I also built a relationship with me that I get my validation from God and I know the direction I'm going. And so my expectations of the world are so different now. I view things, when you start to view the world as, these are people in my life, and you start looking at them from a view of, okay, we had our time, they lived a chapter, or they've been in my life, and now it's time for them to get off. It's their bus stop or their train stop to get off here. And you got to keep going. And you just allow yourself to have that joy of sharing the journey with them, and realize that it's your journey, it's your specialness, and it's not about external validation. So what helps the growth is not fighting the tolerance for the fears or fighting the stress tolerance. It's recognizing that there's a place that you may cry your eyes out. There's many times I've cried my eyes out, but it's a joy to feel those emotions. It's enjoying nature. It's enjoying the journey of whatever it is you're called to do. Because what I'm called to do is what I'm called to do, and whatever you're called to do is what you're called to do, and vice versa of all kinds of other people. So I recommend, is really build up that fear tolerance, because especially if you grew up, and I'll share this. I mean, I grew up in a lot of dysfunction, and I grew up in where this type of stuff was not necessarily cherished. What I'm talking about, I mean, God was cherished, but not in the essence of how I'm speaking about God. But so when you grow up where you're in a lot of dysfunction and a lot of fighting and anxiety and stuff, you really have to learn to have a higher tolerance for fear as you're moving along, and a higher tolerance for stress, because you'll always hear that little voice of your caretakers that may say something nasty to you about why you can't. And it's facing the okay, well, I feel scared of this, or I have anxiety over this, and you just do it anyways. So to me, it's very similar. Since I live in Alaska today, it's similar to a clear visual would be, let's say that you went backpacking with your friends and you're out in the woods and you're camping, you're all having fun, and all of a sudden you all go to sleep and you wake up and all your friends are gone. What do? Do you run around the woods looking for your friends? No, you got to keep moving on the journey. You got to pack your stuff up and you got to keep moving, and maybe they'll cross paths with you again, or maybe they won't. But it's not looking at it any longer from a place as though like the victim position. It's looking at it from, this is what I gotta do.
That's a powerful example. I never heard it like that from a hiking point of view. But this is really what tends to happen, that they don't come.
Yeah.
The loved ones will not participate in this exciting journey. And tell me about this, because I have this idea. I don't know how this resonates. Sometimes I even go as far as saying, family in this spiritual sense, of point of view of the true journey for someone's life is not family. It's the real spiritual family is mostly not family, blood.
Yeah. It's something that if you begin to look at your world, okay, if you look at your world from, okay, traditional world, okay, I grew up like, with lots of family, and thought processes that, okay, these people are always going to be around me and they travel with me, and they aggravate the living crap out of me. But as I moved away from them, and my thought processes and belief systems have shifted, is that I began to realize that I can choose what's aligned with me, and become more aware of, am I just around these people because they're comfortable? Is it comfortable for my nervous system? And that's a huge big one, is when you start to realize that sometimes your choices of being around certain people are just because you're comfortable, they fit into your nervous system of what you're conditioning. And then you realize that, okay, I got to make a decision. Is this what I want, or is it not what I want? And that's part of the journey of realizing that sometimes, we make choices. If we move to a new environment, and I did this, there was a lot of people in my early years in Alaska that, I mean, I've dated my mother so many times. I've dated my brother. I've dated my father. I've dated, I've had friends that treated me the exact same way, talked to me the same way of how I grew up. But because we're always trying to resolve these things. But the freedom is that once you find you, whoever that is, and you start really truly living in that divine essence of why you're here. And to emphasize to some of your listeners, sometimes why you're here may not be exactly why, it's not like your mom, your dad, or your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, what their definition of what you're here for. And my understanding thus far is you may work in a job, and as long as you're living out your purpose, then you'll stay there. But if you cannot live out your purpose and that job, you'll get plucked out. I mean, even people that, sometimes we have this thought process about judging people that are homeless and saying, oh my God, look at those people that are losers. But how do we know they're losers? Maybe they are really living out the true essence of freedom.
Yeah, what a change of perspective. So
Yeah.
who is the type of people coming to you for help? How would they identify themselves?
Well, a couple different types of people come to me. But the characteristics of the people who come to me, I would say that they are people that either they are some type of sales professional, that they've gotten themselves into some type of complex situation in their workplace, which means that they need help. They need help with explaining the complexities of the mess that they got themselves into. And so I do work that's mitigating risk between interpersonal relationships with people. Now, when it comes to the entrepreneur or the business owner, they are people who I would say that they have fears and they have anxieties. They're overachievers, and they end up not really knowing how to delegate work or get people, they don't know how to communicate effectively to get people to follow their lead. So they don't always know how to advance relationships where the work is fulfilling. I mean, they love making money, but they also, at the same time, they take on too many things and they don't know how to be a leader worth following. So sometimes those types of people, they have a lot of unconscious fears and anxieties that, when you're an overachiever, and the reason I know so much about this is because I fit into this category, is that when is because when you're an overachiever, nothing's ever good enough. And so being raised as somebody that was constantly achieving, and it never recognizes as good enough. And when so who I serve is those overachievers who they're living out a psychology that says, okay, it's never good enough, and I can't delegate this, and I can't trust anybody to help me, and I don't know how to ask. And if I do ask, then people aren't dependable. So those are my clients.
Well, amazing. And probably you might find yourself chasing the next thing because that satisfaction does not come. If you're listening to us, you've got Christine here to help you at that point. And I have been there for probably 20 years myself. And are you working online? Are you available from almost
Yes.
anytime, anywhere?
Yeah, I can, I would say my only limitation is I only know the English language. So, but I have helped folks that have spoken another language if they come with a translator.
Mm,
I have helped in that essence, but yes, anybody who is in an English speaking place, I work online, meet folks over Zoom, and I can definitely help folks. I also do have a mastermind that if folks are interested in learning more about that, you have the link, and it's called The Power of Fear, maximizing your goals the easier way. Because what I have found as an overachiever is that overachievers make things more complex than they need to be. I'll just say it that way. and and really knowing how to adjust your nervous system and really knowing how to utilize fear in a way that not to scare people or yourself, but how to use it as an energy to move through it, to get things done, is more satisfactory, I have found. And I love teaching people that. And I really love teaching people about emotional intelligence, because once you can learn how to use your emotions and you learn how to think better and have better strategies. And there's lots of good stuff that I would say that's on my website that I've given you, that there's also some freebies if you go to my website, my main website, thebusinessmd.net. Also, for people that want to check out other cool things, I have at the end of January, I think it's January 25th, I have a webinar coming up that's complimentary that you have the link to. It's called Profitable Communication. So people that really want to learn about the words they use and how to be more profitable and wealthy through, turns their, words into wealth. We can check that out because there's so many good things. I think that, when I look back at who I used to be, I never realized what was possible. I only thought that the world was pretty small. And I thought that the world was only the world that I bought into, that my parents introduced me to. And the world that the job, the corporations introduced me to. But as I've grown, I've realized that the world is endless and there's filled with endless possibilities out there.
Yeah, it's a very, very limited life, chasing the
Yeah.
next paycheck, fitting in, being able to somehow, make that next step on the corporate ladder, which,
Yeah. For listeners, you don't really know what freedom is until you actually start to feel it. And it has nothing to do, for listeners that, you may be judging yourself based on your bank account. You may be judging yourself based on failed relationships. You may be judging yourself based on, something that your spouse or maybe your kid or a friend said to you. I mean, it hurt when my own mother said to me, when I was first entering into the psychological field, hey, that's a loser thing, loser move. I mean, that hurt. But now it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. That's part of the freedom, is that you start to realize that all these things that you thought were important are no longer important. They don't matter.
well, that's a powerful thought. And I just been challenged, I think 2 days ago, that when I mentioned that we've been traveling for, I think, for over 5 months this year around
Uh-huh.
Europe with my family, then how was it to not have a 160 by 2 meter roper queen bed or something like that that is solid? And I was wondering, where does this come from, that someone needs to have a 160 by 2 meter bed? So, because I think I had 190 by, I think, 150, so
Yeah.
it's a tiny bit smaller, and I had my wife with me all along. So interesting how these made up limitations are created in people's minds, why they would not take a trip in a caravan.
Yeah. It's wild. It's something that, I encourage listeners, examine the beliefs you bought into. It's wild once you start to realize that, okay, why did I even buy into this?
I'm
Uh,
just wondering if you could give away a good little exercise right now. How would they challenge, or how would they identify all of these, let's say, limitations and stories they've bought into?
sure. Well, okay. Here's something. Okay, and I'll take it a step further. Is that especially when people are in that place of when they have anxiety about something or they're facing some fears, is that I really encourage listeners, and I do this all the time, is what evidence do I have that this is even true? So let me be even more practical, concrete. So so sometimes people don't want to take their business to the next level. And some people say, why would somebody even say that? Well, I'm speaking unconsciously. So sometimes because we bought it, so because like say if you bought into the whole entire thing that says, well, okay, if I take my business next level, then I'm going to have to be more responsible. So the belief is that, and I have this fear, say you have this fear of being responsible. And so the belief that I'm going to have all this extra responsibility and I'm going to give up all this stuff. So that could be overwhelming. And then saying, okay, well, no, I'm just not going to take my business to the next level. So a little exercise around that would be, what evidence do I have that says that I'm going to have to give up all this stuff? And what evidence does it have that says that I have to be super, super responsible to be super successful? Now, I know that sounds like an oxymoron, what I just said in some ways, but it really takes off like the pressure.
Mm.
Because isn't it true that there's a lot of irresponsible people who have a lot of money?
There is an evidence for anything that we're looking for, and this is a really
Yeah,
great challenge
yeah.
to challenge to
So
believe.
so why what evidence do I have? Is so then that's just saying if I fear responsibility. So, or saying, okay, I can't have fun. Well, who said that I can't have fun? Why did I buy into that?
Mm,
So it's constantly asking oneself about what evidence do I have of this?
wonderful.
Because yeah, because if I don't have evidence to support that that's true, it's like also saying, something as simple as, like, let's say if there's a food that, since you're traveling through Europe, so probably different regions have different food groups. What evidence do you have that to say that you don't like something? I mean, if you didn't try it.
Mm, wow.
I mean, it's a really powerful question to ask oneself. Or what evidences do I have that I don't, or that person will say no? Or what evidence do I have that that person will say they don't like me?
Yeah, and I think as well, sometimes when somebody's going in with that preconception or with that belief, they will finally prove
Yeah,
those
it is, yeah.
very.
Here's another, little tip is it's challenging perspectives. Okay, because if I look at something, I could only own my own perspective on something. And if I have this belief that says that somebody doesn't like me, how hard is it to go up to somebody and just say, hey, I'm curious about your perspective on something? But see, that takes courage. And those are, communication. Maybe
Absolutely.
somebody's having a bad day. Maybe somebody's just grumpy. Maybe they didn't even know how they're coming across. Is it that hard to say to somebody, I have the perspective that you don't really care for my style that much? Now, the other person may start laughing and saying, wow, I didn't even think about it. I wasn't even thinking about you.
This is a good one. What if it's not about me? That's
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
good. So what would you celebrate in the next 5 years if things went really well for you?
Oh, so much. Uh, well, here's something else for listeners, because I plan for things to go really well. So what will I plan on doing? I plan on I plan on having, the ability to be more and more visible, having more conferences that I can invite people to. I plan on over the next 5 years having books, writings of mine, speaking tour, getting out to your part of the world.
Let
You
me
know,
know.
I will, yeah. It's something that I don't look at things. I mean, you can say it if things go well, but I have learned that you need to plan for things to go well. I mean, you can plan for things to suck. I mean, you can if you want to. And even if things don't go exactly as planned, because I'm not saying, because I have no control over how every little move's gonna end up, but I celebrate even when things don't go well.
Hmm. Yeah, you either win or learn. I guess there's always so much out of these experiences. What have I,
Yeah.
yeah, Christine, what have I not asked that I probably should have that you really wanted to share with the audience? Tell me.
With your audience, I want people to remember something, that when you can be anybody you want to be. And but I don't mean that you get to close your eyes and fairy dust and say, okay, well, I get to be, I get to go be, this person who's charismatic and confident. I wasn't always that person. I had to once upon a time work through so much of my own crud and my own stuff. And I made a decision many, many years ago that I wanted to be authentically confident, not like just fake it till you make it type things that people used to tell you to do. So I just want people to remember to love themselves no matter where they're at, and to honor that authentic story, because that story is yours and that's part of your purpose, and use it and share. Don't you look at it, I mean, even if you had, I mean, I looked at it, from my own life, that if I had different parents, my story would be different. So I can sit there and say, I can complain about my parents because they're part of my story to complain about. But at the same time, I recognize that they're also a mile marker of showing me that anything's possible. Because I didn't grow up with parents that understood emotions. They didn't talk about emotions. They were either loud or quiet. And so anything's possible. Anything. If you want something, do it, be it. And if I also encourage people, don't go about it alone. Go find a coach that understands you. Find somebody that will help you, challenge you in a healthy way, and help you to, get to the possibilities that you're searching for. And that's the greatest thing that I would share with your listeners.
Well, what a gold nugget at the end. I believe this is the fast lane. You want to play life. Christine, you really pointed it out that you guys will need someone with you on the journey. Well, thank you very much. It was an amazing conversation. We brought up so many tiny adjustments and things and rethinking challenges. I really loved this conversation, and I hope we will go on and continue on other platforms and other lives.
Yes, yes, we
Before,
will.
is there anything
Thank
else?
you.
Yeah.
No, I just hope that your listeners, recognize that no matter where you're at, you're right on time with where you're supposed to be. You don't have to be there always.
Beautiful. Possibilities are endless, and be around people who are living those possibilities, because that's your only chance, I guess.
It is. It is. It's something that, look around. If you don't like your circumstances, look around who you're socializing with. Look around with, the TV programs you watch. Look around to the music you listen to. Pay attention. And if you don't like, if your friends are people who have, poverty consciousness, they're negative, be brave enough to, limit yourself, because you'll learn. One last things I want to offer listeners, how I always know that I'm growing is my orbit starts changing. is all of a sudden people that I was close to, they automatically get pushed further away. And not because we get in a fight or anything, it's just that I don't have the interest and doing the things that they're doing. And then new people come.
Now that's a deep one, yes. An energetic shift takes place, and that's the best thing that can happen in your life. Well,
Yeah, allow it to happen. There's nothing wrong with you when that happens. It's your journey. It's just those people got off at the bus stop and you're just continuing on the bus.
beautiful, beautiful last words. Christine, thank you very much. It
Yes,
was
thank
a
you.
conversation, and see you
Yes.
soon.
Yes, see you soon. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.